For a full list of materials used in this project, check out the description below and click on Show More. There's some other good stuff down there, so you'll want to make sure you check it out. We're going to start the circular part of our toggle with a series of 40 15-0 seed beads. I have at the one end of my thread here my stop bead, which I am also using in the toggle. So that counts as one of my 40. So I've got my stop bead plus 39 more 15-0 seed beads, and these are the Mayuki. You're going to take your 40 seed beads and just put them into a little loop, and then with your needle, you're going to go through your stop bead. And once you pull this thread, you'll have a nice little loop here. And this will be the inner diameter of your toggle, of the circular part of your toggle. So now we're just going to do a basic peyote stitch. If you are familiar with peyote, this will be very easy for you. If you're not familiar with peyote, we've got lots of other videos and I'll show you how to do that right now. So coming out of that stop bead, which was my first bead, I'm going to pick up one 15-0. I'm going to skip over the next 15-0, the 15-0 sitting right next to my stop bead, and I'm going to pass through the next bead. So what this does when I pull tight is that it actually just allows that bead that I just added to sit on top of the bead underneath it, which was the bead that we skipped. And I'm going to go ahead and continue just doing the same thing around my whole loop or my whole circle of seed beads. I'm coming out of the one seed bead here, I'm skipping over the next and just passing through the next one. And when I pull tight, you'll start to see that it's actually, we've got a pattern of two seed beads sitting on top of each other, and then one seed bead, and then two seed beads sitting on top of each other, and then one seed bead. And we're going to continue the whole way around, skipping over one seed bead and going through the next. And when we pull tight, that seed bead that we skipped over is going to be sitting right next to the seed bead that we added. So just go ahead and continue in this fashion the whole way around the loop, and then we'll move on to the next step. After you've done the peyote stitch the whole way around your circle of seed beads, you will come to the beginning again here. And you'll notice that it's the beginning because you'll see that the bead that you're coming out of, that one bead that you're coming out of, will be followed by the two beads stacked on top of each other. So when you pick up an initial set of even beads, like we picked up 40, when you pick up an even number of beads, you'll always have that step up. If you pick up an odd number, you won't. But we picked up 40, so this gives us a step up, which means that what we'll have to do here, coming out of that one seed bead, we'll simply go through and step up to the next level by just going through one of those seed beads in that pair that's following the seed bead I'm coming out of. So I'm coming out of that one seed bead, and then I'm just going through one of the seed beads in the pair directly following. So now at this point, I am now starting a whole nother row or layer of peyote stitch. I've done my step up, so I've officially moved on to the next level of my peyote. And at this point, we're going to start using a slightly larger bead. So I have my 15-0s here, which I started with, and I can put those guys aside for now and get out some 11-0 seed beads. I'm going to use this aqua color. So my next row is going to be the same as the first, just using that larger bead. So again, I'm just going to continue with peyote. Now since this isn't the first row, this isn't the row that we set up, it's going to look a little bit different. We're coming out of one seed bead, which should be one of those seed beads in the set of two. So one of the seed beads that we stacked on top of the other. Coming out of that bead, we're going to skip over the bead that is sitting by itself. So the bead that's kind of sunken in there. And then we're going to skip over that bead and go through the next bead, which will be one of the beads in the set of 2. The set of beads that are stacked on top of each other. And in this fashion, we're just going to go around the whole circle here, adding our 11-O's. So our 11-O's are going to be sitting on top of that single bead that was sitting by itself. And we're just going to continue around until we get back to where we started with our first blue bead here, and we'll do our step up. So I'm going to continue, and then we will move on to the next step. I've almost completed my row with the 11-O seed beads, my blue seed beads. I have one more that I need to add, so I've added that to my thread. And now to finish this row and to do my step up into the next row, I'm going to skip one bead, pass through the next, and then to do that step up, I'm going to pass through the first bead that I added in this row. And that will then step me up to start the next row. So every time you finish a row, to step up, you're just going to go through the first bead that you had added in that row. And then you're going to move on to the next row. That will signal now the new row for you. So I'm going to go ahead and continue here. I'm going to do 2 more rows of peyote stitch on this side. So I'll have a total of 3 rows in the blue or the 11-O color. And then I'm going to move to the other side and do 2 rows. So I'll show you when I switch over. But what I'm going to do right now is just do 2 more rows of peyote in the 11-O, my blue color, for a total of 3 rows on this side. I've now done 3 rows of my 11-O peyote on the outside here of my silver center, and these are the 15-O's in the center here. So to get to the center here, I'm gonna work through, I'm just gonna take my needle and thread and pass through my beads, just follow my thread path back until I get to the very inside here of my beads. And that's where I'm gonna add another 2 rows of peyote. So I'm just gonna take my needle and thread and just pass through the seed beads sitting next to each other and winding my way through until I get to the layer of seed beads that I want to be, where I want to be. So there's no particular pattern for this. You're just going forward 1 bead after the other, add a diagonal through the beads, and then you want to come out at one of the silver seed beads in the center here that is at the very inside of that circle. And that's where you're going to start adding your next row of peyote stitch. I'm coming out of one of these silver seed beads, and if you're familiar with peyote by now, you want to be coming out of one of the seed beads that's sticking up. I'm going to pick up an 11-O, skip over that bead that's sunken in, and go through the next bead that's sticking up. And just like I did on the outside here, I'm going to do the same thing on the inside, but I'm just going to do 2 rows. So I'm just 2 passes around my circle in that peyote, and then we'll be ready to make this look a little bit more like a toggle. I've now finished making my 2 rows of peyote. So on my toggle here, I have on the back, this is where I started, and I have my 3 rows of peyote, so you can see it's wider. And on the front, I've only done 2 rows, so it's not quite as wide. If you put it on your finger here, this is actually the perfect way to hold it for the next step. I have between the front and the back here a little trough or valley, and you can see my silver seed beads here. That's my center, that's the inside of the toggle there. My thread is coming out of one of my 11-0 seed beads here on the front side where I only did the 2 rows. So I'm in position to start adding a new row of peyote. For this new row of peyote, I'm not actually going to be adding beads. I'm just going to be using beads from the other side. So as we look at this, on my right side, I'm coming out of one of my 11-0s here, ready to start a new row. And my right side here is the side that has just the 2 rows of peyote. And now coming out of that 11-0, like I said, ready to start a new row, instead of picking up a new bead, I'm just going to grab the bead from the left side. And I want that to be the bead directly opposite and the bead sticking up. So I'm going to grab that bead sticking up, and then I'm going to pass through the next bead on the right side that's sticking up. So what I'm doing here essentially is just cinching up in back and forth, and I'm cinching this up, picking up the beads that are sticking up. I'm going to go back to my left side here and pick up the bead that is sticking up and go to my right side. So I'm always moving forward in the circle here in the toggle and just crossing over from one bead to the next, picking up the beads that are sticking up. It's actually very much like a zipper, so just think of it like a zipper. But it's also just the peyote stitch. It looks a little bit different though because we're not picking up new beads, we're using the beads that are already there. And as we do this, you'll see that the 2 sides will come together and it'll start to form into that circle or tube shape. So we're just going to continue around here and do this the whole way around, back and forth from right to left, picking up those beads that are the ones that are sticking out the farthest, and they should fit together just like a zipper. Go ahead and continue all the way around until you get your whole toggle seamed up there. After you've finished with your loop section of your toggle and you have it all cinched up, you're just going to remove the needle from your thread or grab a new needle and thread. We're going to actually leave all of this extra thread on here because I'm going to then use it to attach my bracelet directly to my toggle. So I'm going to build my bracelet off of my toggle. So for now, I'm just going to set this section apart and I'm going to work on the bar. For the bar, I'm going to pick up a stop bead, and I've chosen to, again, just use a stop bead in the same bead that I'm going to use for my project. So I have 1 bead here, and then I have 17 additional beads, so a total of 18 of my 11-0 seed beads. And now what I'm going to do here is for the bar, it's just going to be 8 rows of peyote stitch. So I have my section here, my length of 18, and I'm going to pick up 1 bead, skip the first bead, pass through the second bead here, and remember that your first section or your first length here of 18 is actually going to become rows 1 and 2. So we're just going to continue here in a simple peyote, picking up 1, skipping over a bead, and passing through the next. And we're going to continue this for 8 rows, or until we have 8 rows. And then once we have 8 rows of peyote, we'll go ahead and take this section of peyote here, it'll be a rectangle, and we'll turn that into our bar. After completing 8 rows of peyote stitch, I have a thin rectangle here and just a flat rectangle of peyote stitch. My thread is going to be coming out of my last bead here on the last row, and it's one of those beads that is sitting under. It's one of those beads that's sunken in, not one of the beads that's sticking up. So what I'm going to do here is, like a little burrito, I'm just going to fold this up, and I'm going to fold it so that the sides, the edges here, match up. And we should have something that's looking almost exactly the same as our loop portion of the toggle looked when we cinched that one up. So we're going to seam this one up as well. Because I'm coming out of one of the beads that's actually sunken in, I'm going to come over to the other side here to the bead that is sticking up. So I'm going from the right side to the left, from the right edge to the left edge. And I'm going to start seaming this up just in the same way that I did for the loop portion. So I'm going from right to left, working from one end of the toggle bar to the other, and just picking up all of those beads that are sticking up, that are facing upward. And if you hold this tight together as you do it, you'll get it really nice and tight. You can also make the bar a little bit wider if you want. You don't have to do 8, you can do 10 if you want, but 8 is, I think, the smallest that you would want to do. If you try to do something a little bit skinnier than 8 rows, it may not, you may not be able to curl it in like this little burrito. So go ahead and try with 8. I would recommend 10 if you feel it's a little too tight for your beads, but you don't want it to be too big because then you're going to have a hard time getting it through your toggle loop. And you want it to be roughly the same size as your toggle loop, just so that it looks nice. So I'm going to go ahead and finish cinching this up, and then we will talk about building that bracelet directly off of our toggle. I finished cinching up and seaming up my toggle bar here. It's going to be a little loose on the end here because I don't have anything holding it together yet. So what I'm going to do is go back and forth again, just one more time, back and forth, following that seam, and this will reinforce it, and it'll also pull everything tight. So I'm going to go back the other direction, and then I'm going to work my way back about halfway through the toggle. So you can see here, just following the thread path back and forth, just pretend that you haven't seamed it up and just go back and forth. And this will also just reinforce that seam, because anytime you have a toggle, a piece that's going to get a lot of wear and tear, something that you're going to be tugging on, you just want to make sure that you are getting it as strong as you can. You want it to really hold up to any of that pulling that you might be doing on it. So I'm just going down again, back and forth, and then I'm going to get to the other end, switch, and come about halfway through so that I can then be in position to start building my bracelet. I finished reinforcing my toggle, so nothing here is loose anymore. If it feels a little stiff, all you have to do is just grip it, give it a slight little twist. We don't want to grip it and twist it too hard, but just give it a little twist and make sure that everything seems to be right where it needs to be. So now what we're going to do is start building our bracelet. I'm starting with my toggle, with my bar portion, and I'm just using the thread and needle that I used to make the bar. So this is all one piece. I've brought my thread to about halfway through the toggle, so down about 8 or 9 beads. And I have a nice mix of just small 4 or 5 millimeter beads, anything that you might have in your stash, any little mix you want to make. And I have this here to start building and adding to the center here of my bracelet between my bar and my toggle. I want to start with some seed beads, because when you bring your bar through your toggle, you don't want anything large directly following your toggle, or it might get stuck in your toggle and it might actually prevent your bar from going through the toggle. So we want to leave about 1/2 inch or so of not very big beads. I might just use one little 4mm bead here and just a couple more seed beads. So you want to start with something that's not going to prevent your bar from traveling through the toggle. So you can see here my beads and my toggle will very easily fit through, so this is not a problem. And now what I'm going to do is start getting a little bit more interesting with what I'm stringing. I'm going to start picking up some larger beads, and I'm just going to have fun with it and just pick it up in any sort of random pattern that I want. You're also going to have to just make sure that you're picking it up in the length that you want. So beforehand, you want to have a good idea of how long you need to make your bracelet, and have a ruler handy so that as you build, you can measure and you know when to stop adding beads and when to put the other side of your toggle on. So I'm going to pick up some more beads here to the length that I need, and then I will show you how to add to your toggle loop on the other side. I've added about 6.5 or 7 inches of beads, and I've added those directly onto my toggle. So now at the other end of my bracelet, I'm ready to attach to the loop part of my toggle. I'm going to attach close to where my thread is attached, where that extra thread is coming off of my loop, because I will also use this extra thread to add beads to my bracelet, and it'll be nice just to have that thread already in position where I need it. I'm going to pick up one seed bead, and I'm going to pass through one of the seed beads in the toggle, one of the ones that's sitting on the very outside edge. Pick up another seed bead, and then just pass through the first bead, that first 4mm bead that you have on your length of bracelet here, the strung portion of your bracelet. And now what I'm going to do is really just sort of embellish this and add layers to it however I want to. Coming out of this one bead here, I can reinforce this string if you don't want it to be very full, or what I can do is I can continue adding layers to the bracelet. So what I'm going to do here, because I have enough thread to do that, I'm going to start picking up more beads and just treat this as another layer of my bracelet. And again, I'm just picking it up very randomly. I just want it to kind of have this nice organic flow to it, so it doesn't look like I planned it out. So I have this one bead here at the base, that's where I'm attaching to my toggle, and I have that one that I'm sharing, but then I'm just going to break these lengths apart, so I have 2 threads or 2 lengths of strung beads, and then I will come back to the toggle here, and I will attach away a little ways away from the toggle to allow for that space there for the toggle to be, for the bar to be able to go through the toggle. So go ahead and add some more beads, and then I'll show you how to work it on this end. I've added my beads here in just a very random pattern, which is what I like so much about this bracelet. And I've stopped short though on this end. I'm not going to go all the way to the bar. I'm just going to go to about this point here. So you can see here off of my bar I have 3 seed beads, a 4mm bead just for some fun, just to add a little interest there, and then I have another 3 seed beads. So following that, I have the this bicone bead here, and this is really where I want to make my connection. I want to leave this section here of my seed beads about a 1/2 inch off of my toggle, off of my bar. I want to leave that alone, and I don't want to make that any thicker. So my second section, or my second length here that I've strung, I'm going to connect to my bicone bead here. And of course it may not be a bicone for you, it could be any other bead, but I'm going to make my connection here a little ways away from that bar. So here on this side, where I have my loop, or my loop for my toggle, I can make that connection right at the loop, so I can make it right off of the loop. My toggle here, I want to make sure I'm giving a little breathing room to that toggle so that as I pull it through my loop, I don't have anything stopping that toggle from getting through the loop easily. So you can see here, this is the beginning of my bracelet. Now this can also be the end of my bracelet. I can stop it here, and this could be the whole thing. But I want to make it bigger and fluffier, so I'm going to continue to just add strings and lengths of beads here back and forth between the toggle bar and the loop. I'm going to add string as I need it. I have thread here coming off of my toggle loop, so I can use that thread as well. And I'm just going to continue to make this a little bit bigger and fluffier because I have a nice pile of beads here, and I want to try to use as many of them as I can. So as you do this, go back and forth. You can twist them, you can interlace them, you can do a braid, you can come off of beads, add more, and join back up with your thread, with your length. You can do all kinds of things in between. A little note on the bar end here of your bracelet. When you add new lengths of beads here to your bracelet, you don't want to add any more beads here, but you can go through your beads here. You can go through your seed beads, and if you've added a little bead like I have, you can go through that bead as well. You do want to go through and reinforce it, and you want to make sure that you're attaching this well. You want this attachment here to be pretty secure. So take your needle and thread and go through that seed bead again, that seed bead that you originally came out of to start the stringing portion of your bracelet. And you're going to go through that bead again, and then go through the stringing portion. And then at this point, once you've got past this first ½ inch or so that we're leaving skinny, and you come through that first bead where you're going to start adding more beads here. Now you can continue to string and add as many beads as you want. So every time you go back and forth in your bracelet, do go through these beads that come directly off of the toggle bar and reinforce that, because that will make it so much more secure, so that as you're working with your toggle, as you're putting it on and off, the wear and tear there on that joint, on that little connection point, will not weaken it. So go ahead and continue here and fill this up as much as you like, and we'll check out the finished pieces. If you want to do something a little bit more than just going back and forth with the stringing, you can use the third and any subsequent stringings that you do to pull the other strings together. So the other lengths, the other strings of beads that you've done, you can actually pull them together and hold them together with the other threads that you're running through. So here I have some beads that I've put on my thread here, and then I'm going to take them to one of the other lengths that I've added and just share one of those beads. Pull through, and then I'm going to do this again. So I'm just going to pick up a number of beads. Again, I like to do it very randomly. So I'm just going to add, and you can pull these strings apart here so you can see exactly which side you're on. And I just like to Like I said, I like to do this very randomly so that it does look very mosaic, like it has a good mosaic look to it. So coming off of this thread here, this string of beads, I'm just going to crisscross and share one of the beads on the other side. So by doing this, it just provides a little bit more interest and it keeps the strings from flopping around too much if you're doing something like a multi-strand. I'm going to do a couple more, I might do one more pass through on this, and then I will be done with my bracelet. Here is my finished bracelet. I took my string of beads as I was stringing them, and I did a lot of twisting, and I joined the threads, the strings together, so it gave me this really nice netted look. Very oceany, very organic, mosaic, and it looks really lovely on. Also with this big clasp, it's really easy to put on. So the way that I do this is I drape the bracelet over, and then I bring the toggle portion up through the loop and just give that a little pull through, and it'll fall right in place. So you can see the toggle here is just as eye-catching and beautiful as the rest of the bracelet. So go ahead and leave some comments below and let me know if you tried this, how much you liked it, what differences in your design you made to make yours your own and a little unique. You can do lots of things to embellish this toggle, so feel free to post on social media as well, post in our Facebook group, and show us how you changed this up a bit and really made it something unique to yourself. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it. Please leave a comment below and let me know your thoughts on the project. If you're also interested in more tutorials just like this one, click on that subscribe button so that you're notified as soon as we have new videos available.